Okay, sorry for the wait. You are live.
We are live now?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the 18 January 2022 meeting of the Annapolis Transportation Board. This is our first meeting of the year. Welcome all, and we will plunge directly into the agenda. Charles Brooks was to have been our scribe for the evening, but he's dealing with dental difficulties and was enough under the weather that I asked Dave DeQuincio if he might step in ahead of his scheduled appearance in this role, and he kindly consented to do so. Thank you, David. So he is our scribe. The agenda was modified to add just one person, and if I have a motion for the approval of the agenda, we can proceed.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Second.
Yay. The yays seem to have it. The next item is approval of last month's minutes, which were distributed to you. Thank you, Elvia, for producing those. And if anybody take a motion to approve, and then we'll accept comments if there are any.
So moved.
All right. Second. All in favor? Aye. I assume there is no discussion. Are you all happy with it as written? It was a fine job. And we are, by the way, I have submitted many of these minutes over the months, but the city has been tardy in actually posting them. So I've been working to try to get them posted. There are gaps, but I hope they will get around to it. The next item is public participation, and I learned that there have been public communications in the last few months. The city was not forwarding them to us, and so we were not aware of the fact that communications had been received. I think we've fixed that now, and we do have one item from a man by the name of Lanny Hartman on the subject of electric vehicles. And if Elvia will take the gavel and lead a discussion on his comment, we will all be appreciative.
Well, Lanny is an expert in electric vehicles. He's been involved in this for years and years, and he's kind of a gadfly and follows federal legislation and state, and I assume local where he lives in Columbia. But anyway, I don't exactly know where, why he wrote this. I don't know if he might have had some communication with Jackie Gild. I think that's probably where it came from. Because I'd been jumping up and down about how we needed to mark the spots, particularly, mark them better, particularly at Pitt Moyer and then, some of the other locations. But anyway, he sent us this treatise about how the federal law and the Uniform Traffic Control Devices, federal legislation, makes it impossible for us to mark the spots for EV charging in a way that doesn't conform. Now, the signs, I don't know that this applies to signage. I think it only applies to like painted markings on the pavement. So the signs can say whatever they want, but of course signage is confusing. And I think Lanny actually has a good suggestion, because people can, people see what they want to see, and they interpret language like electric car charging only, electric car parking only while charging. So somebody could drive up in a pickup truck and say, oh, well, nobody's charging, so that means I can park here, kind of a convoluted interpretation, but nonetheless. So he's got, some sort of suggested language in here that makes sense. And then he discussed, I hope you all have seen this, he discussed how, you want the signage to be in such a way that people will not be encouraged to disconnect your car when you're not there. So anyway, he kind of likes the language of a person may only stop, stand, or park in a plug-in vehicle in a plug-in vehicle parking space for the purpose of charging the plug-in vehicle. I think it probably ought to be wordsmithed a little bit, but anyway, you get the point.
Mhm.
So that probably ought to be something that we recommend to the city. And I mean, you know, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about the federal regulations for marking pavement. And I had been suggesting to Jackie Gould for a long time that we needed to do a better job of not only the markings on the pavement, but also the signage. So I think that that's where this came from.
Can you answer the question of whether the city's practice is somehow in the code, so that the code itself needs to be changed, or does the city have latitude under the existing ordinance to do the right thing?
As far as I know, and it's too bad Jackie's not here, but as far as I know, the code is completely silent on this.
I see.
Yeah. Which is
Um,
probably why at Pit Moyer, for instance, there's only signage and not lane marking. So,
okay.
but this needs to be addressed, you know, for electric vehicle charging in the city garages and so on. So we ought to make some kind of recommendation. Doesn't have to be right now, but we should. And particularly, you know, when Hillman's rebuilt, there's going to be charging in that garage. I hope more than there is in the others, but you know, let's get ahead of the curve. I know it's going to be a couple of years for Hillman's torn down and rebuilt, but nonetheless, we ought to have something in the books. It might take that long to get something in the city code anyway.
I have a suggestion, and that is that you take this input together with your own expertise and knowledge in the subject, and with a subcommittee of whoever would like to work with you, make a recommendation for what we should do at our next meeting.
Okay. Hey, Tom, are you interested in this? I'm picking on Tom because he drives electric too.
Yeah, sure. I would be happy to help you.
Okay. Great.
All right. Anybody else?
So Kurt,
Yes.
Kurt, if I may, I just want to clarify that the action that I'm writing down here is that Elvia is going to run with this and Tom is going to assist in terms of leading or putting together a recommendation.
Yeah, a subcommittee of 2 so far to come back to us next month with a recommendation.
Okay.
And anybody else who would like to participate, of course, is welcome to call Elvia.
And we'll run this by, you know, the legal office and make sure that we've got, you know, language that makes sense.
Okay, good.
I mean, I realize that they would do that after the board. I'm talking about informally. They would have to look at this when the board makes a recommendation. The law office would have to look at it anyway. But I mean, I know, you know, a couple of the attorneys over there well enough that I can just informally ask, hey, does this make sense?
Okay, good.
Okay.
And you can communicate with Lanny as necessary to.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks for the homework, Kurt.
Well, I have a technical question since I'm still contemplating getting an EV. Is it still possible to walk up to an EV and unplug it against the owner's will?
Not every manufacturer, but yeah. What about your Tesla, Tom? Can somebody just unplug you?
Not unless it's unlocked. If it's locked, the charge cable is locked as well.
Yeah, my car is cheaper than Tom's. So yeah, mine can just be pulled apart. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Alderwoman Pindell Charles.
Good evening, everyone. Glad to be here. Elvia, I would suggest that you contact Mike Lyles directly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Yeah.
All right. The next item on the agenda, number 5, is election of a chair, vice chair, and secretary. Let me speak to the last one first. I would be delighted if somebody is willing to take on the role of secretary for all of our meetings. We have had difficulty in finding enthusiasts for that role in the past, and are presently on a rotating system where A different member takes the minutes every month, which is fine, but I will go. If there's an enthusiast who would like to take on that role for all of our meetings, that's fine too. But I will just plant that seed in your head. Shall we continue as we have in the past, or elect a secretary to do all of them? So let's go back to the beginning. We need to elect a chair and vice chair and then secretary. Nominations for chair. I've had so much fun doing it. I'm willing to keep going. But if somebody is, again, enthusiastic, so enthusiastic that they want to displace me, speak up.
I nominate Kurt.
I second.
Kurt for life.
I see. Do you know something about my longevity that I don't know?
We're going to abbreviate that KFL.
It's only your life that is longevity, that for your life.
Okay. Any discussion?
I should think the discussion would be from you.
No. All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
No,
Vice Chair. Beth is our current vice chair. Are you willing to serve?
Yes, but again, if someone else would like it, I'm perfectly happy with that as well.
All right. Well, I nominate her.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, the secretary role. What is the pleasure of the group? Is there someone who is so happy to do it full time that they will volunteer to do it as secretary, or shall we continue the rotation? What is your pleasure?
I say rotate.
Well, I'll be a fool. There are no projects to like rewrite the bylaws or anything like that, right? We're just
No.
really talking about codifying the monthly meetings.
Yes, that's right. And you have seen examples of what the minutes look like.
I will be foolish enough if you guys want one person to do it.
It would be better if one
I
person
just think
did
I would
it.
learn more if I did it one year.
Yeah,
I would-
May I nominate the floor, Tara?
yes. Don't want her to
mind.
say too much. She might talk herself out of it.
Do it quickly, folks.
Second. Yeah, I second it.
And the term doesn't begin this evening, right? The term begins
Now.
2 meetings ago.
still on
All
David.
right.
is all I'm saying.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, and hearing no volunteers for discussion, shall we put it to a vote? All in favor of Tara Ashmore?
Aye.
All right, thank you so
Tara,
much for volunteering. Yes?
Kara, there's a specific format that they wanted in, so you need to go over that with Kurt, or just look at the last one, which
Thanks.
Kurt
Thank
took
you.
what I wrote and put it into the city's format.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've changed the city's format in putting in a YouTube link in every one. Every one of these meetings has a YouTube link, and I put that in. That's very handy for the scribe to consult. All right, the next thing is reports from committee members. There's only one on Fare Free Transit. There are 3 of us. I'll start the discussion. At our last meeting, we approved a paper giving our recommendations and findings, and that has been forwarded to the City Council and the Mayor. We are scheduled for Thursday to appear with the full City Council and Mayor at a work session, and we'll be giving a presentation which is essentially the same as the one that Rhonda has already heard, maybe with a few little changes and so forth, but essentially the same pitch for Fare Free Transit. In summary, we find it's a good idea, and even better, it's affordable. The additional amount of money it would cost is truly trivial in the total scheme of things, and we think that the benefits more than just justify the additional cost that the city would have to face. So that is the situation. Oh, I also had an op-ed in the Capitol, which they kindly printed, which will have some benefit of informing the public, I think, about what the city is considering. And I've personally had a lot of positive feedback on that piece that appeared in the paper. Is there any more discussion on this, Beth
I
and
just
John?
wanted to mention that I understand the Hillman Garage has been delayed to a March date, which gives the city council and the mayor an opportunity to enact our recommendation and gain the benefit of helping the public during this time of parking limitations.
Yeah, that scheduling thing does help us to mesh better.
I don't have anything to add, Kurt. You covered it pretty well.
Okay, great.
Kurt,
Everybody's
Can you say again when your meeting with the city council is, your presentation? Is that
it's
Thursday?
yeah, I believe
Yeah.
it's
Thursday at 3.
Yeah,
Thursday,
Thursday, 3
okay.
o'clock, and you will each get a Zoom link. You can participate, join the thing if you like.
Kurt, if I may,
Is it
is that with the
virtual?
full council or just with the city
I believe it's the
council?
full council. Is
It's
that
the full
correct, Rhonda?
council. Yes.
Can we expect the mayor to participate in that as
Yes.
well? Good.
Yes, the mayor's on 99% of the time is there.
All right, good.
And
Thank you.
Kurt, is it all virtual? And do you want to see a lot of participation?
I think it's, yeah, by all means, everybody who is interested in it is free, should join, if nothing else, to find out what happens and what the reactions of the council are.
And I think it is all virtual now. I think the city's, am I correct, Councilwoman, that we have gone to, or Alderwoman,
That
we've
is
gone to
correct.
all virtual? Yeah.
Yeah. And we've
Yes,
already
that
received.
started today.
Yeah,
Started today.
Oh, we've received the link.
Yep.
I
I
did
got the
anyway.
link.
Okay, good.
Kurt, that may raise a question. Should the link be extended? Can the link be extended to the rest of the board members?
Yes, it can. In fact, I was already asked for the list of the board members, which I will supply, and
Okay, great.
you should get it quickly.
Okay.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a late added one, Eric. Yes, Eric is here. Eric, are you here and ready to give us a
Yeah.
brief update?
Yeah, I will try to make it brief. So there were two items that I was asked to brief the board on. One is the downtown electric mobility plan that was recently introduced to council as a CIP, capital improvement program item. And the other topic I was going to share, just Forest Drive enhancements that are sort of coming on board with some of the recent projects. So in terms of the electric mobility plan, this was introduced at City Council, I believe, at the last meeting. So I think it will be going to the committees. There'll be probably a lot more discussion about it. But the basic idea is that as a response to Hillman Garage going out of commission for 18 months or so, there's a pretty immediate need to both improve mobility into and around downtown, and also just sort of change the way we do things in general, how we move around. And there's obviously been a lot of discussion about electric vehicles. And so there's sort of three pieces to this electric mobility plan. There's one, to transition the existing circulator to an electric bus. And Kwaku has more information about that. But essentially, it's sort of a similar idea as the current circulator in terms of route and frequency. The second item is something that's called the 10-minute trolleys. These are also kind of fixed route, frequent service shuttles, but they're small, 6 to 8 seat. I hate using the term golf carts, but you've seen them around town. The hotels already use them. They look like extended golf carts. And the idea is that there would be a company operating them in the short term, but the city would eventually perhaps take that over if it proves successful. And the idea is that one would be in the downtown area, the other might be in Eastport. They are moving people primarily from parking garages to population center, downtown, and just basically providing another mechanism for people not be driving around and looking for parking. And then the third piece is the electric ferry, which you've probably heard of. Its sort of basic route would just be from Eastport, at this point, 5th Street in Eastport to the city dock. Part of the capital improvement program description includes doing the planning needed for this ferry service. So, 5th Street is sort of seen as one of the best candidates for a mobility hub in Eastport. It's an existing street end park that hasn't really been improved much over the years. It's right next to the parking garage at the Annapolis City Marina. It has a lot of potential as a place to invest in, as a street end park. And so that's kind of the leading candidate. But I think the feasibility study would look at maybe a couple other locations on the Eastport side that would be a better candidate, perhaps. But the main idea is for people to avoid driving into downtown, park nearby, take the ferry, bike, or walk to 5th Street, take this ferry. And I should say, I've been in a lot of other conversations with the National Park Service and, visit Annapolis and Arundel County. There's a lot of interest in ferry service, I would say, happening right now. And this might be the trial of, seeing how it runs. And it's a pretty short route, but it could take a bite out of people moving into downtown. So that's the downtown electric mobility plan, as it's called. And then I guess just shifting over to Forest Drive, the big thing I just wanted to share is, for those who haven't been tuning into the Planning Commission meetings, the last few have been discussing the project known as the Villages at Providence Point. This is the Crystal Springs property. They're going to be talking about it again this Thursday. Very large project, as you all know. One of the I think most significant things about the plan that's being reviewed right now is that it introduces the long discussed idea of a road parallel to Forest Drive, essentially extending Skipper Lane from South Cherry Grove to Spa Road. And that's, I think, a pretty exciting development in that plan. It provides some redundancy to Forest Drive. It would essentially alleviate some of the traffic on Forest Drive. I can imagine people using it coming from Hunt Meadow or Annapolis Middle and to cut over to some of the retail along Forest Drive rather than getting on Forest Drive. Also, as part of that project, the development team would be extending the shared use path on Forest Drive from where it currently ends near Hilltop Lane all the way to Spa Road, and then turning the corner at Spa and extending all the way down to Hunt Meadow. So it's a pretty extensive addition to the bike network. I'm happy to see. And then the road network within that development also, I think the standard that they're using in general is very high, I think, from a multimodal mobility perspective in terms of providing space for pedestrians and cyclists. I know at the Planning Commission, there's been a lot of discussion about the width of the vehicular lanes, which is appropriate to, they're discussing those. They are fairly standard 12-foot width, which could be narrowed for sure for safety. But that's primarily the criticism I think that I've been hearing in the Planning Commission on the transportation aspects of that project. Sorry, two more items. The Anne Arundel County Transportation Department is also doing a design study for the intersection at Chincopen Round Road and Forest Drive, where 665 Aris T. Allen starts. They're reviewing all of the past plans, essentially trying to move into a design phase, since there have been many recommendations over the years and nothing, very little has actually changed. And so city staff are stakeholders in that process. And there will be I believe some community outreach, but I don't have a schedule of that yet. And then finally, we have a bike mobility project that kicked off recently that is working to extend the Hilltop Lane bikeway to Forest Drive, to where the shared use path is, and sort of addressing the gap that exists from Chatham Lane right before Spa Road, across Spa Road, and then continuing to Forest Drive. And so there will be some public outreach for that as well. There'll be most likely a workshop in, I would say, March or April on that. So that's my update. Happy to answer any questions if there's time.
Thank you. On the micromobility, Eric,
Yes.
could you give me a hint as to what the planned duration of that component is and how it is funded? Is it funded out of the contract for the Hillman replacement or by other means?
The funding is varied. Actually very little of it would be coming from city general fund, as I understand it. I think a chunk of it would be coming from the state and county, but I don't think it's all fully worked out yet. I think the budget is kind of broken out over the next 2 fiscal years. So,
and the duration, is it meant just to
Yeah.
cover those construction projects, or is it meant to be a permanent addition?
No, I think the idea is that these are, maybe with the exception of the circulator, the 10-minute trolleys and the ferry, these are pilot projects that we'd be looking to see how successful they are and expand if they do prove to be functional, alternatives. And so I don't see them expanding, and unless we kind of see positive impact. But that's my understanding as of now. But I think we'd be looking at least a 3-year duration, probably 3 to 5 years.
Any other questions, discussion?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Eric, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, Eric, thanks so much for the detail. I just, for my, since I'm the scribe tonight, if I could just get a clarification of a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding Forest Drive, the parallel road, did you say Skipper Lane to Spa Road?
From South Cherry Grove, that's where it currently ends, in that Village Green, I think it's called,
Okay,
the shopping center with the CVS.
all right. And then the shared use path, that would connect what to what?
It would extend from Hilltop Lane to Spa Road, and then around. it would go down Spa Road south to Hunt Meadow.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
A couple other things. Just bear with me a sec. I have terrible penmanship, and then I go to read my notes and I can't.
No problem. It was a lot.
The Chincopen Round Road 665 intersection study, is that being, do you know if that's being driven by, accidents or just traffic volume or?
Yeah, the county is definitely prioritizing projects on major roadways based on traffic crashes, fatalities, just general hotspots.
Yeah.
And this is a big one. So that they've prioritized it primarily for that reason, and it does get congested there too. It's
All right. And then if I may, just to keep things moving along here, the bike mobility project. So that is to close a gap that exists in the bike lane, bike lane network, right?
Yeah.
The Hilltop to Forest. Did you say Chatham?
From Chatham Lane, where Chatham Lane meets Hilltop. That's where the Hilltop Lane bike facility currently ends. And
right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then
Okay.
Just one more thing.
Sure.
For you, in the shameless self-promotion department, I wanted to make you aware, in case you did not know, that for 11 years, my wife and I have been building a business in marine electric propulsion. And so you have local expertise if you need it. And that work includes power vessels and that we have done. And yes, the product advancements. So we don't make anything. We are dealers and integrators for a large number of manufacturers. And when somebody comes to us with a boat and a particular use pattern, we look at what manufacturer has the products that will do the job they want at an affordable price. That's our MO. So we've built up a lot of expertise over the years in terms of how to do all of that, and new products. The tools in the toolbox are rapidly improving, so it's going to be very interesting in the next couple of years. But if you ever have any questions about that, reach out. You can reach out to me. I'm glad to help.
All right.
Great. Thank you. Elvia and then John.
Yeah, Eric, regarding the ferry, has the city talked with Watermark? I mean, this is in direct competition with the water taxi.
Yeah, they have. The city manager's office has met with Debbie Goslin from Watermark a few times, and she might operate. I'm not really sure, but no, she's been definitely part of the discussion. So I have not been part of the discussion, but I know that everyone is aware that Watermark operates the water taxis currently. I think something to be aware of. That it does seem like there is a sort of direct competition there. There are a lot of precedents for places where Baltimore is one precedent where you have a publicly operated ferry. They have a ferry circulator that's part of their public transit system, but then they also have a privately operated water taxi system. Obviously, larger harbor, more space to cover, but I don't know. There seems like there's a few ways of doing this that might be a win-win for everybody, but yeah, the city manager's office is definitely working with Watermark on this. So.
Well, I mean, I realize that the ferry has to, wherever the ferry goes, there has to be parking nearby until we have public transportation like New York City, So I'm just thinking, okay, so where else should this ferry start or end? I mean, a great place would be like over at Jonas Green Park to keep people,
Mhm.
that side of the river from driving over. But then that would upset the entire vibe of that park, but nonetheless, so has that kind of stuff been thought about?
That would be part of the future planning for ferry operations. I
Mhm.
mean, the National Park Service seems really bullish on this. I think they would love to have more ferries operating to the destinations they're trying to promote.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I agree. I think there's a lot of other places these ferries could go. I think we just need to find out. There needs to be some more study about how to do it in a way that, the funding of it is going to be a big challenge, because it's not like these things are not going to be self-supporting, in my opinion. But so
John and then Zoe.
Sorry for my blurriness, and Eric, thank you for coming. It's always helpful when you talk to us. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I think at the beginning you talked about electrifying the circulator, correct?
Yeah.
Can you have a timeline on that for us?
I don't know off the top of my head what the time frame is. Kwaku might have more details, but I think in the next fiscal year. I mean, that's the idea. I think
Okay.
I think we're looking at federal funding for that. I think it's all been priced out. I think he has all the details. So
Okay. I'll take it up with Kwaku. Thank you.
Okay. Zoe and then Carol.
Hi, Eric.
hey,
Do you, on a third topic, do you have an update on the Poplar Trail Extension Bike Path Project? I saw the
Mhm.
green painting over on Poplar, and then I was just
Yeah.
sort of wondering what the status was at. And then when you're answering that, does it connect to the new bike path that they just painted in on Jennifer Road? Have you seen that one behind?
Yeah, I have. The improvement on Jennifer Road I find to be somewhat exciting, but it doesn't really connect to anything yet.
Well, that's what I was trying to envision, what it's connecting to.
So that technically, I think it's the first cycle track in the county. If anybody hasn't seen that, it's worth checking out. I think it was very well done, but it was primarily done to address the lack of a sidewalk on that side of Jennifer Road, on the north side Jennifer Road, not for bike connect. I mean, bike connectivity was sort of, I think, a secondary goal, knowing that there are plans to improve segments connecting Jennifer Road, but maybe not right away. So yeah, it's just kind of, I would say, local improvement that has not been really well connected yet. But to the point of Poplar, and I should just clarify that Jennifer Road improvement was done by the Anne Arundel County Department of Transportation, but kind of stay up on these things. The Poplar Trail improvement. So there's a few things, the green gravel, it's called, the painted green lane on South Poplar Avenue. We were asked, city staff were asked to join an upcoming civic association, Germantown Homewood Community Association meeting to discuss how that's been working, and to also kind of provide update on plans to improve the existing Poplar Trail. We did get grant funding to widen the existing Poplar Trail, or just generally improve that, since it's our most popular trail in the city and gets a lot of use. And that project has not kicked off yet. We don't even have a contract from the state who's funding that. But the Germantown Homewood Community Association wanted to just kind of get ahead of things. And so we are meeting on February 9th with that community association. And we'll, talk more about, it's more of a listening session, frankly, I think, to hear how the community has been, appreciating or not the green gravel, and see if it has any merit to continue. It didn't get really finished. I should say the intent was for it to go all the way down South Poplar, and for various reasons it did not do that. So that might be part of the discussion as well.
I like that little segment very much. I noticed
Yeah.
some people have been offended by the color, but I think it's just fine. And a lot of people do.
Well, I should clarify, there were some questions that came in about the color, but I mean, that is the standard color. NACTO is the National Association of City Transportation Officials. They publish a great guidebook on urban bikeways, and they have a spread in there that I've been sharing with folks that kind of clarifies that as the standard color for bike improvements and bikeway improvements. So that's kind of the update on the existing Poplar Trail. But we're also working on the design of the eastern extension of the Poplar Trail that goes along the service road behind the Graduate Hotel, and would ultimately continue to People's Park on Calvert Street next to the Whitmore Garage. And that's kind of going into a 30% design phase, and there will be a public workshop on that in, I would say, March is what I'm anticipating. And then just to kind of share an update. And then we got funding to do the western extension of the Poplar Trail as part of the same grant that would fund improvements to the existing Poplar Trail. So that has not kicked off yet, but the county has wrapped up a feasibility study for doing that western extension that would take and that's kind of what we're building off in our next phase. That would take the Poplar Trail from Admiral Drive all the way to Route 2. So that's pretty exciting. There is one part of that that'll probably be more straightforward, but and that's the existing utility corridor that goes from Admiral Drive to Gibraltar. It's kind of a clear shot, and then after that, it gets a little bit more complicated when it hits West Street. But no, I'm excited. We're sort of in the pipeline for state funding on these projects, and so we're just trying to stay focused on keeping them moving. So hopefully
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Carol, if we can wrap
Just
it
in
up
line-
with you.
In line with Eric's comments about the electric ferry, and also in his indirect reference to connecting to Eastport in regard to parking and mobility, I want to call the board's attention to the existence of the Maritime Task Force, which would be a subject of probably a long presentation at this point by Eric, but they are working closely with the National Park Service and with commercial marina operations around Spa Creek and Back Creek to enhance the maritime industry, maritime activity in Annapolis. And it has the long range sound of a very exciting plan and planning process. And I think it would be to our benefit as a board concerned with mobility of many types to stay abreast of their progress. It seems like a great group and has great potential for enhancing a lot of things in Annapolis.
Uh-huh.
Is that the group that Eileen Fogarty is leading?
Yes, indeed, a woman with a track record for groups
Right.
like that.
I should clarify, the Maritime Task Force, technically, its work is complete. We did sort of culminate. It was about a 12-month process that the task force was was sort of in formation and discussing improvements to the maritime districts of the city, and led to this, what I think is a great strategy document. It's called Strengthening the Industry. It can be found on the City of Annapolis website, and Strengthening the Industry Maritime Task Force Strategy document is what it's called. And yeah, it really does a great job of laying out how Annapolis can protect and enhance the maritime industry that's here. And a lot of that then goes into making improvements to water access that are more equitable and inclusive, and just general economic development ideas, sort of about how the industry can be expanded in the city. And the idea of a maritime industry fund is introduced. And so I would encourage folks to look at that document. And that task force included, it was kind of a who's who of people in the maritime industry in the city. And so it was
My wife Sally was on it.
Oh, okay. Great.
Alderwoman Pindell Charles, your hand is up.
Just want to make a comment. We all are excited about the Chincopen Route 665 Forest Drive study. That was as a result of the task force that was formed back in 2019. Basically heading it up was Eastport Civic Association and the Greater Parole Community Association kind of were the forefront, but we also had many partners, and we had representatives from every ward in the city to serve on that task force. And this is a result of that. Number two, also, we're excited about the multimodal transit center that's going to be built at the Annapolis Mall. So at some point, I'm sure we'll get an update on that, even though that's in the county. It's going to be very serviceable for those residents in the city. So just want to say kudos to everyone who's here on the Transportation Board, Planning and Zoning, and Department of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is general discussion on what we're going to do this year, work priorities. And in fact, I'd like to consolidate that with our usual around the table thing. Why don't we just go around the table and hear your thoughts about what it is we ought to be doing. We have some actual significant accomplishments which were detailed in the last two annual reports. You got the latest one that I drafted. There were comments from Tara, which were helpful. Those were the only ones that I got, but that report is finished and submitted, and we highlighted a couple of things that we accomplished. I do want to have an impact on the city because we're smart people with good ideas on things that the city can do to improve the overall transportation system. And so my question to you is, what should we be working on? So let's just go around the table, and you can give us your thoughts, however structured or unstructured, and we'll try to do the best we can from what you say to move into the rest of the year. And first on the list is Beth.
My thoughts are just, from my point of view, continuing with the Fair Free Transit initiative. I think that's going to take an awful lot of our time, especially us three that are working on it and interacting with the city and with other people, depending on how it goes and where we go. So I see that as my main thought and push for this coming year.
Okay, thanks. I'm next on the list, and I'll give you my wish list. It's kind of threefold. I would like to see real connectivity between the capital city of the state of Maryland and the two nearest cities, Baltimore and Washington, and the largest transportation hub already in existence, BWI Airport It is astonishing to me that there is no way of getting there for most people apart from private automobiles. And I think for the long term, this is more than silly. So if we can make any recommendations that have any practical value for establishing better connectivity to BWI, to Baltimore, and to Washington that don't rely on the private automobile, that's what I would like to see. Tom, you're next on the list.
I would like to focus on more work on the pedestrian pathways. Eric mentioned some of them, just to continue to try to interconnect them so that there is a way that if you wanted to, you could bike or walk, from point A to point B throughout most of the city.
Thanks. Elvia?
Yeah, I agree with everything everybody else has said. I think those are great priorities. I'd also like to see more EV charging infrastructure for residents and visitors, but also, grow out the infrastructure for what we hope will be, totally electric EV fleet at some point. But I'd like for us to get, for it to be a little more diverse and not depending on BG&E for every infrastructure installation. There are plenty of other companies, so we don't have to be, in lockstep with the utility the whole time. Unless there's something I don't know about, which I'm sure Kwaku will speak up if there is.
Yeah, EV charging it's going to be very, very big, and it's important that we do it right.
Well,
I am impressed that the private sector is already moving very nicely. Tesla is serving its own fleet first, but they intend apparently to open it up to all vehicles at some point. And
well, the city should also encourage the owners of, for instance, places like the Eastport Shopping Center to put in charging. You want people to shop in town in city limits. Well, that's attract that audience.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Charles Brooks is not with us. He's suffering quietly at home. Kara?
I don't have anything particular. I might add on to Elvia's idea, particularly for someone who lives on Prince George Street and does street parking. I haven't dug into it yet, but I'm curious, could I apply for an electric vehicle charging station to my house and have a dedicated spot that if I'm not charging, somebody else could use? But I don't know that has anybody tackled that idea.
Not here. Not here,
Yeah.
but in other places, yes. But what the city will tell you from the get-go is we can't guarantee you a spot. Even if they get through the hurdle of putting up, putting a charger on the street in front of your house, for instance, that other people could use, they won't guarantee that spot just for you.
Right, but I'm thinking more, I'll put it in.
Yeah, yeah, but you still have to get the permit,
Right.
and all that. And that hasn't been done in the city yet. And you're not the only one who wants that, believe me. I mean,
Right,
there
so
are
we'll have to
people who are
keep
running extension cords out to the street. Yeah.
I can imagine.
And the city isn't happy about the extension cords running over the sidewalk either. So that presents a different problem.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Trip hazard
the
and safety.
ones I've seen, people have put in the no trip plastic.
Oh, yeah,
things,
yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, it's like officially it's totally illegal.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And
Okay.
then, and Kurt, your notion is interesting, and it's really sad. I had a father-in-law who often spoke about how the old railroad that went from DC to Annapolis, the minute cars came, that went the wayside. And, so much of that has become walking trail and bike trail. That how do you recover it without impacting that now recreational use? So it's an interesting notion. We'll see where we get with it.
Indeed.
Anyway, nothing independent of those.
All right. Tara and Kara rhyme too closely. So, Kara, if you're up now.
Thanks, Kurt. So I love all the priorities I've heard here. fare free transit stands top of mind for me. I do think to myself that, assuming this is adopted, this is a really good opportunity for perhaps the city to rethink how they communicate with passengers about shuttle services. So as we expand and grow our ridership, there's going to be a greater need for better passenger communications. So that's something I'd be interested in working on.
Wonderful, thank you. David DeQuincio.
Yeah, I'm glad to have this opportunity. I think this is smart, because there are some things that that I think I could contribute, but and could put some effort into, but I would rather not do so if the consensus is that these things are not where we want to put our time and attention to. I notice when I get the floor and speak about opposition to transit, I'm not sure everyone is with me or thinks that is important as I do. So
we're dumb enough to be optimistic.
Well, yes, and that's a good thing. But I like to plan. I'm happy when things work. I'm happy when things work out. But I've learned to plan for the worst. So I do think that we should devote some effort toward educating ourselves and being ready and being prepared for transit opposition, and opposition to alternative transit and transportation in general. It's not just transit. There are bike foes out there, and I remember during my time on the Planning Commission, I'm on several occasions people commenting on whether it's ordinances or projects. Would say over and over again, well, we're Americans and we drive. That's what it means to be an American, is to drive a vehicle every time you have to go somewhere. So I can do some presentation work to the group on what are the tricks and deceptions that alternative transportation opponents use, and how to be prepared for them and how to fend them off. That's one. Then the other thing, I think the city has an option, or has something the city could be if we wanted to push the city in this direction. In addition to being a center of excellence and leadership for electrifying transportation, the city could also be a place where people could come and learn the real history of transportation. I'm amazed at how many of my fellow Americans misunderstand the history of how we got to where we are in terms of transportation. And when you don't know where you've been, then when you confront problems today, you come up with bad ideas because you don't understand how you got in the jam that you're in. And I've been surprised and a little frustrated over the years at how a city that does so well with other aspects of its history and making or providing opportunities for visitors to learn history here about a great many topics. The city's transportation history is very hard for people to uncover. There are a couple of photos at Pusser's restaurant, and that's about it. And one of the things we could do is push Historic Annapolis to focus a little more effort on exhibits and things that about the history. of transportation here. And while during my tenure on the Planning Commission, there was a study that where we were looking at where a consultant was studying the possibility of a streetcar. And this young, very bright young transportation engineer said, well, you know, getting the streetcar around Church Circle is really difficult. And I had to remind him, it was done in 1908. So, you know, I would have expected him to know that. Anyway, so that is something I think the city can and should do. But again, if I'm the only one who believes that, then I'll shut up. And then the third thing I think we could work on, when I think this would be more in the think globally, act locally kind of mode. Nothing that's happened in the past couple of years has altered my fundamental thesis that our nation's transportation problems have three basic roots: shell game accounting, misunderstanding of history, and sloppy language. And if we wait for Washington or Congress to do something about any of those three things, is never going to happen. But we can do things here by proposing resolutions for the city council to consider that would address some of those issues, particularly the accounting problems and the sloppy language. And I'm willing to work to the extent that I can on those things. But again, I don't want to put a lot of effort into it if I'm the only one that thinks that that's important.
Thanks for your thoughtful comments, David.
I'm with
Carol?
you, David. I'd like to see that work done and would certainly be happy to contribute to it if I could.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, great.
Carol, you're up.
I'm grateful to Alderwoman Tyndall Charles for mentioning what has become a focus of mine. As many of you know, I live in Ferry now, in the town center actually, and I'm a at-large member of the Transportation Board. And I've gotten quite caught up in the planning, the fairly large-scale planning that's going on for Ferry and the town center and this general development area, the Ferry growth management area. And the mobility center, the multimodal center, is a very big component of that planning, and the parole people as well as the county people recognize that this is very closely tied to what Annapolis is involved in transportation itself, and so I'd like to give more attention to that and possibly some participation. Not just in Annapolis venues for the consideration of it, but the county and the parole aspects as well. And that would make me feel at home in two places I feel at home in now, Annapolis and parole.
Thank you. Vince Harriman had other duties that kept him from the beginning of the meeting, but he's here now. Welcome. And
thank you.
You're
And
up.
I apologize for being late. I want to follow up on what Tom and David said, but in a slightly different way. As a cyclist and runner, I'm more and more terrified by what my fellow citizens are doing with their vehicles. And in particular, I've noted that, and this is something that I've mentioned to Kurt some time ago, that in Washington, D.C., they have something called Vision Zero, which I think New York calls the same thing. In both cases, in Washington, D.C., for example, 6 out of the last 7 years since they instituted Vision Zero, fatalities and injuries have actually gone up. So they're actually been trending in the opposite direction. It's similar for New York City, and it's similar for jurisdictions across the country. It's not because there is an overabundance of additional vulnerable road users. I think it's almost exclusively because of the attitudes of the motorists and the lack of any meaningful legal recourse to the victims of that kind of violence. So I personally want to focus almost exclusively on vulnerable road users and pedestrian and cyclist safety. I have my own ideas about that. I think that education and enforcement matter more than infrastructure, for example. That's just my point of view as somebody who spent a lot of miles on the road. I know everybody doesn't share it, and I don't need to convince others of my opinion, because I'm willing to say that increased infrastructure and increased visibility is also a key component to increasing everybody's safety, whether or not they're within the bounds of additional infrastructure or not. So for me personally, I would like to focus almost exclusively on vulnerable road user safety.
I, for one, very much support that.
I can help you with that too, Vince. I have some experience doing communications related to sharing the road and how we all need to be able to coexist on our shared spaces and shared roadways. So,
thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you both.
And then Zoe.
I agree with Vince. As you know, I represent the Naval Academy on the Transportation Board, and we have 4,000 midshipmen that walk and exercise on sidewalks and roadways throughout the city of Annapolis. So safety of pedestrian and cyclists is critical. The installation is also very interested in continuing engaging with the community on general congestion. Any given Friday, and the summer congestion, as well as the just general congestion in the Annapolis area when we see a traffic accident, or we have one of our many public events. So tomorrow actually is the first meeting of a transportation work group that is part of a DoD-funded study looking at vulnerability of our transportation network in the city to natural hazards and extreme events. We worked with the city to get them the funding to look at evacuation response and the design of intelligent transportation signals, so we can work on potentially reverse flow and more smoother evacuation planning when the city. So the Naval Academy only has 2 main entrances for vehicles, down at Gate 1 and Gate 8. During the storm in last October, both of those access points were closed due to flooding. So we're really interested in working on how to remedy our access issues, but also general hazard planning in and around the city, and making sure we're all thinking about those as we move forward. So I will, as I have before, keep you all informed. I think, Kurt, you received an invitation to participate on that work group call tomorrow. So we'll learn more about that, where they are with that study, and I will continue to keep folks engaged. And as you know, we also support the bicycle pathway projects that we're all been talking about, and continuing to work to push for a bicycle pathway along King George Street and Route 450. So those are kind of the Naval Academy's priorities at this point.
Thank you so much. Kwaku, if you are with us.
What happened to John?
Oh, John. John, we skipped you. Come back.
I figured it was intentional. It's all right. I'm fine. I'm not hurt.
Oh, no.
So the first thing I want to say is I'm probably forever going to be joined at the hip to Fare Free. So I'm happy about that. Along with Beth and Kurt, we shall champion that forward. Another thing I would like to work on this year is I would like to work with Kwaku on the circulator. I think way in which Ruston Limousine Service and SP Plus are managing that is very poor and needs substantial improvement. And I know a lot to help Kwaku. I ride it multiple times a week, and I think we can make it a much better service than it is. And so Kwaku, if you'd accept my help, I'd love to work with you. The last one, I think that it should be a priority, was kind of last year and it went away, was Kara was working on a survey, a ridership survey or a transit survey or an Annapolis citizenry survey. We should not lose that focus. If we get fare free enacted, it is going to change our ridership. Our intent was not to include route changes in fare free to keep it simple and actionable by the council. But that would be the next step, is to start looking at where can we take this new free service to better service the citizenry of Annapolis. So understanding and doing that survey shouldn't be dropped from our agenda. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's right. As you said, we did intentionally try to make this simple, and one of the thoughts lurking in our minds is that to the extent that fare free stimulates additional ridership, additional demand, it is going to generate additional pressure for service improvements, which I don't regard as a problem. I regard that as a very good thing, because we do need substantially better service, and all the things that John said are totally correct. Kwaku, are you still in the background there?
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you. John, thanks for the offer. I will have to reach out to you on the circulator, because I need to submit a proposal for enhanced circulator service during the construction of the Hilma parking garage. So I'll reach out to you sometime tomorrow, because the plan is due this Friday. So thank you for the help. Quickly, one other thing is that the director's position is still vacant. It was re-advertised, I believe, December 16th. I don't know the deadline. The department is not part of the selection process. So the position is still vacant. Eric did mention the Annapolis Mobility Plan, which the mayor did introduce as an amendment to the FY 2022 capital budget. It did talk about the electric bus. 2 GEM vehicles are sometimes called the golf cart vehicles. Actually, their real names are GEM vehicles. They used to be part of Chrysler until 2011, when it was sold to another company. So that is part of the Annapolis Mobility Plan, which is 100% electric. It also includes the DC charges. We have got estimate of the DC charges for 5 charges. That is around $400,000. That's also in the plan. And of course, the electric boats, and then the design and docking facility. So these items consist of the mayor's 100% electric Annapolis Mobility Plan. In terms of the circulator bus or the electric bus, what we plan to do is that whenever we do have money to replace the diesel bus, we can ask for extension so that the city can add more money to that in order to buy the electric bus. At that time, we had the cost to be around just over $500,000 for the 30-foot bus. It may be more because it was based upon price quotation from BYD, which I understand that in the infrastructure bill, BID is not eligible to use federal funds for purchasing of vehicles. So the prices are likely to go up, especially given the supply chains issues. There is also a feasibility study going on by the county to look at the potential of consolidating transportation services in the county, particularly what the county is providing and what Annapolis Transit is providing. A consultant has been selected, a GMT, and very soon they will reach out to Annapolis Transit to provide some input to that. So as the study moves forward, I will share with you some of the highlights for this feasibility study of consolidated countywide transit system. So whilst you have at the back of your mind the free transit service, this will be coming very soon. And I think there is a rare chance of this happening given the fact that the county is spending a lot of money to build a multimodal transit facility around the Annapolis area, Annapolis Mall area. So we may want to keep that in mind. Eric did mention about the Hillman Parking Garage. One of the components is the Hillman Parking Garage Mobility Plan. So in that plan, they do have the on-demand transit service to be provided by VIA. So VIA will introduce its app where people can download on their smart devices and request trip. So during the construction period, which I believe is about 14 months, there is an on-demand service in the downtown area. Very soon, some marketing materials will be sent out for people to be aware of that. As part of the Hillman Parking Garage Mobility Plan, as I said earlier, we will provide enhanced mobility. We are going to add at least one bus to the resting bus so that you'll be able to transport people. We are looking at every 7 minutes, especially during the morning rush hours and the evening rush hours. We may end up to restructure the current circulator route because looking at the ridership data, not many people are being picked up in West Annapolis, which now goes. So in order to make it more efficient, I think we may have to go back to look at what we did when we first introduced the circulator. I think that will really make it more reliable, faster with 2 buses, and then you see what happens. Ideally, at the end of the construction period, if the city has found the money, we would like to take the circulator back and run it and at least have 1 electric bus on it. So any support that we can get from you, we will welcome that. Another FY thing is the FY23 budget process is underway. So if the board has any budgetary issues or advice regarding transportation, I believe it is the time for the board to look into that and get ready to submit proposals when the Finance Committee actually start hearings on the FY 2023 budgets. That is all that I have. If anybody has any question for me.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Kwaku, if you could, I missed part of what you said about the vehicle. There's a vehicle manufacturer that used to be part of Chrysler.
Yes, please. It's called Global Electric Motor Cars. So it was a subsidiary of Chrysler until 2011, when I believe it was sold to Polaris, that company that does kind of 4x4 dead bikes and stuff like that.
Snowmobiles.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a company that we're looking at buying equipment from, or?
Yes, that's the name of the cars generally. They are not golf cart electric vehicles. They are called GEM vehicles.
Right. Okay. And, I know what you mean now. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, six passenger vehicles. I did ride in one recently. It's very comfortable and a lot of leg room in that vehicle. So that is, I think, the mayor's mobility plan. they plan to buy 2 of those vehicles for the downtown 10-minute trolley service.
You know, we've talked about this for years, like 3 companies ago. And one thing that when people ride these things, they really like them. You see everybody smiling. They're just fun to be in.
Yeah, I do agree. I never rode it until recently when I rode with Craig. Looking at that, it will be surprising. It's very nice, frankly. A lot of leg room. I was really surprised.
It's like the San Francisco cable car, huh?
That's my theory about ferries. They're going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the update. And we are at the end of the agenda. If there is no other new business, Rhonda, you had something to say?
Yeah, I had one question from Mr. Dick Quinzio. You mentioned 3 things: the accountability, the sloppy language, and what was the third thing?
Poor understanding of history.
Oh, okay.
And let me
Thank you.
clarify, when I say the thing about accountability is more about accounting, and mainly about how that issue gets into things like what constitutes a subsidy versus what constitutes an investment, and and who pays for what parts of transportation. That has a huge impact on how things play out. And what you'll see in the work that I propose to do is how manipulation of that terminology by some clever people had an enormous effect on the direction that we took as a nation.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Elvia?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that Annapolis Green, that I'm still loosely associated with, has set the date for 2 electric vehicle shows, one on Earth Day on April 22nd. And the second one will be as part of National Drive Electric Week on October 1st.
Thank you.
What are those dates again, Alvia?
April 22nd and October 1st.
Right. By the way, the Tesla that I lost for is ever more difficult to think of getting as they have technical problems. So I looked into your car. You can't buy that one either because apparently there's a battery problem, right?
No, they're replacing the batteries out of what.
Yeah, my
people
daughter
call-
has one and it's been recalled and it will be replaced. But my understanding is that the 2022 vehicles are ready to be sold, except for the fact that they can't sell them until the battery replacements on the previous year has occurred.
Well, look into the Ford and the Volkswagen.
Uh-huh.
Those are good.
Good. All
And
right.
also there's going to be, for the first time ever, there's going to be an EV pavilion at the Washington Auto Show that starts this weekend. First time ever.
That sounds like a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will take a motion to adjourn.
A move.
All right. All in favor? Thank you so much, everybody.